There we go, it's recording. So good morning everyone and welcome to our information session this morning on Catalyst Schools. My name is Elaine Smith and I am the Director of the Innovation Community at Catalyst, and we are just so pleased to have all of you teachers and educators join us for this morning's session. And even before we start to talk about Catalyst Schools, we want to acknowledge just how difficult a year this has been, especially for you as teachers. We know that across all different sectors, there have been different challenges, but none, I don't think, as much as you as teachers and educators have experienced this year. So for you to take an hour this morning to join with us and to listen to what we have to share, we really appreciate that. But we also want you to know that we have been your biggest champions this year, and we want to continue to be your champions going forward, because we think that the work you do is incredible at the best of times, never mind under the conditions of a pandemic. So thank you for all that you do for the young people in Northern Ireland. Thank you so much. So for anyone who's not familiar with Catalyst, and Catalyst is a not-for-profit organisation. Catalyst exists in Northern Ireland to make it easy for individuals and organisations and companies to innovate. We provide workspace across Northern Ireland on 3 different locations, and we take the income from the workspace to fund and support our entrepreneurial support programs. We also we benefit from funding from the Department for the Education, or Department for the Economy, sorry, and also our Catalyst partners. So we're able to every year provide that support to hundreds of entrepreneurs, businesses, whether those are startups or scale-ups. But our core purpose at Catalyst is to build a strong innovation community. And within that community, we want it to be really easy for people to innovate. Whether you're a young person going through our Generation Innovation Programme, or whether, as I said, you are a large multinational who may be based and your workplace is at Catalyst, we are creating through our people, our programs, our places, and our partnerships, the ideal conditions for you to innovate. And we want this to be an offering to you as school leaders across Northern Ireland, that we have seen how you've innovated throughout the last year. And over the last few years, we've been able to work with you and listen to you. And we want to provide further support to help you create environments where young people can really be prepared for the exciting future that is in front of them here in Northern Ireland. So we're delighted to have you with us this morning and to share some information, and hopefully you'll be inspired by what we've discovered and what we're planning. But I'd love to introduce now Steve Orr, who's the CEO of Catalyst, to give a little bit more background to where this whole initiative has come from and why it's so important to us at Catalyst. So over to you, Steve.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Elaine. It's very hard to follow Elaine. She's that good. So just to add a little bit to what Elaine was saying there, so Catalyst, we used to be called the Northern Ireland Science Park. We're actually a Good Friday Agreement project, created with the purpose of playing a really important role in the creation of new industries in Northern Ireland. Working in that space between universities and industry, and then also with schools, and helping to create new opportunities for our young people to be able to come into. Now, we're going to sort of refresh our vision for the future as we get towards the end of this year. But if you think about it, right, this little part of the world used to lead the world in about 5 industries 100 years ago. And you know what? We're going to do it again, right? We've picked the industries where we're going to focus. And the goal is within 10 to 15 years, we're going to be world leading again within that time period, within 2 of them. Now, there's one key difference on this. Now, I'm not sure if you keep abreast of what the Department for the Economy publishes, but about a month ago, they published a vision of the economy of Northern Ireland. What they're effectively saying is that we need a new approach to how we do this. We can't do it as we used to do it. Now, one of the really important things within this is about inclusive innovation. Okay, so the future of Northern Ireland's economy is about innovation. But one of the things that's really important, and it's not just the Department of the Economy, there's a heck of a team that is built around all of the organizations that play a role in this space over the last year. But the thing that's really important is we want the opportunities that are created in these new world leading industries to be accessible for everybody. Okay, we do not just want to build out what might have happened before COVID and happened in most places around the world, which really benefits the meritocracy, people that are good at passing exams. But we've got to make these opportunities accessible for everybody. Now, whenever we've looked at this, and at Catalyst, we always ask, we try to center everything around the entrepreneurs, and then the people who are really got the responsibility to create these new companies and these new opportunities. And whenever we ask everybody, what's the biggest problem? Not the biggest problem, or what's the thing that needs the most help? They all say education. Now, they're not saying it from the point of view of everything's broken. It's more from the point of view of what can we do to help? Okay, now, I was quite fortunate enough to be invited to speak at a principals association at a retreat in about 4 years ago. And in that process, I got to learn what life was like for a school principal in Northern Ireland. And it's just so tough. And Catalyst, we're non-profit. We reinvest any of the surplus profits to get back into the ecosystem. And so we don't have a lot of money, but we just thought, look, we've got to do something. And we're very fortunate, to have worked with Peter, whenever Peter moved back from California, and Patricia. And over the years, we've done an awful lot of work that we just thought, look, maybe we could try this, and maybe we could see if this could help. But the key thing is here that, we understand that the pressures and the difficulties that are on teachers and principals in school. And our whole sense here is, well, how can we help you? We don't just want to come and tell you what we think are all the answers, from an ignorant position outside. It's how can we come in and really help, either through providing, facilitating some peer support, but if we've got this very powerful community that Elaine touched upon, how can we help you to become part of that community? And then how can we help you to really, really benefit from it? And then ultimately, how can we help the pupils to benefit from this? So that all of these new opportunities are being created and are going to be created over the next decade or so are seriously accessible to everybody, including those who are farthest from opportunity. Okay. So look, I just want to say I'm delighted to be here today. I'm really delighted to be here. We just want to help. And so just good luck. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. And now I'm going to hand over to Patricia and Peter, and we're going to hear more about the actual program itself and how you could potentially get involved, your principals could get involved, and your schools could be part of Catalyst Schools. So Peter and Patricia, over to you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I am Patricia, and again, just to reiterate the welcome to everybody that's here today. This is our sort of fairly short agenda that we want to get through this morning. So we want to start off with giving you a bit of a background to the Catalyst Schools programme and have an opportunity to hear a wee bit from you. We are then going to give you the overview of the School Leaders Fellowship programme that this new Catalyst Schools programme has its basis in, and a small amount of information about a recent pilot that we've run also with students in St. Joseph's in Newry. Then what we're going to give you is the overview of the programme outline that we want to implement in the next academic year. You're going to have the opportunity to hear from Declan Murray, who is the principal of St. Joseph's in Newry and has been a participant in the programmes. And then the key thing is this, we're going to give you the link on how you may be able to apply or encourage your school leaders to apply. And we have an opportunity for some short questions and answers at the end. Our vision, whenever we started to design and develop this schools programme over time and with experience, was to think about inspiring and preparing the next generation of innovators for the future of work and learning. So that forms the complete basis and vision for the programme as it's currently in shape and what we're going to define for you this morning. I'm going to hand over to Peter again.
Yes. So first of all, just a good morning, everyone. It's a delight to see you. If you are, and I see some familiar faces and names there, as well as some new ones. If you're in a place where you can turn on your camera, we would love to see your faces. I think most people on this call know what it's like to lead Zooms with folks with their cameras off. It's really a pleasure if we are able to see you. So thank you very much. As Steve and Elaine suggested, I'm a learning designer and work in field of sort of that intersection of design thinking, school leadership, and professional development. And it's just we're thrilled to be able to talk with you today. So as Patricia said, we're with Catalyst Schools, we think that there's this opportunity to inspire and prepare the next generation of innovators for the future of work and learning. But that raises a really important question of, well, what do we even mean by that? Like, what are the skills that we need for the future of work, the future of learning, the future of civic life? And don't worry, I will not read all these, and I don't expect you to read them either. But I think one thing that we, over the last several years, we've all begun to see is that whether we call them the 6 C's or the deeper learning outcomes, or we look at the Northern Ireland curriculum at the cross-curricular skills and those key elements, there's a real convergence here on the kinds of things that we're going to need to be able to do to thrive, right? Not just in the future, but today. We need to be able to think critically, to communicate. We need to be creative problem solvers. And we need to do this in the context of the core academic content. And I think we know, I think as educators, we've always known this, but I think it maybe more people are beginning to see now. We also need to care for the whole child. We need to be really aware of that social emotional piece as well. And as Steve pointed out from the very beginning, all within an inclusive environment of ensuring that we can really serve those students who are furthest from opportunity. So this is a big it's a big ask, right? Of like this is what we're trying to do. This is kind of our mission in terms of what we need to do for supporting all students in preparing for the future of work and civic life and learning. But how does that happen, right? We know we don't just teach creativity. Here's how, or tell someone how to be creative, or tell someone how to communicate, right? We learn this in the context of culture. Like we learn it in the context of actually engaging in communication, engaging in critical thinking. And in order to do that, it's practices that require a culture to support us as teachers to be able to structure our classes in that way, and to be able to take steps to really engage kids in powerful, meaningful learning. So with Catalyst Schools, we think part of this is that a Catalyst School will have a visible culture of belonging and engagement, which of course we know are central to learning and innovation, and then all, of course, within the alignment of the goals of the curriculum, which as we just saw there, it's right there in front of us. So what does it mean? How do we do this? Well, it has to start with school leaders, right? You can't have a school culture that doesn't involve school leaders. And so we're hoping that we can support school leaders to empower teachers and students to really create that learning community that's dedicated to developing the essential skills for the next generation. Not as one more thing to do, but in a way as the core thing that we need to do, in that we're really looking at how can we support the learning that we know kids need. So as we open up, this is a pause. You've heard a lot of me talking, and I'm sure. So we'll pause there for a minute. But I would love to hear from you all as we reopen schools next year. What is your dream for your school as a learning community? So in the chat, if you could just jot down a sentence, a phrase. We'll have a break, and then what's our dream for your school as a learning community next year? Put on a minute of music while you're thinking about it. Absolutely. Anyone else? Recovery. Yes. Anyone else? Dream big. Building that community. Roll with changes and excel despite them. Nice. Lovely. All right. Anyone? Last chance? Okay, thank you. To be able to provide opportunities for learners to engage with folks outside of school, bridging those connections. Yes. Pupils returning to a productive learning environment and ensuring a safe, nurturing space. Ready, fire, aim. Nice. All right. Good. With that, one of the ways that we are going to be working, moving forward in Catalyst Schools is that we're going to learn from an example. Steve talked about some of the work that that we did earlier last year, as did Elaine. So, but part of, as you can tell by my accent, I'm not originally from Northern Ireland, but moved here about 4.5 years ago. But my work prior to that, and even after I moved over, was been in a program that called School Retool. Now it's merged with another program called the Teachers Guild, and these come out of the design school at Stanford and the design firm IDEO as a way of really supporting teachers to apply a design thinking mindset and design doing a set of actions to school change. And so I will not go into this very deeply, but I want to honor our inspiration and our and kind of the model that we're building off of, but really grounded in. If I were you in your place right now, I'd be thinking, well, what is this thing that's actually happening? In a professional learning fellowship, we'll be focusing on 3 key elements. One is, we don't change without shifting mindset. So we'll be trying on these hacking mindsets of having a bias toward action, being willing to fail forward and start small, and all within an equity mindset, knowing that if we really want to serve those students who are furthest from opportunity in our schools, who maybe are currently being marginalized in our schools, then that's going to be that we'll need to apply an equity lens. We'll really need to look and be honest about what's happening and how we can make sure to be as inclusive as we can in our schools. We'll also be, so with that mindset, then we'll apply a framework and a set of tools, and this will be familiar to some of you and less familiar to others, but really to put kind of a skeleton on which to take action. And I think that's the key word here, action, and that everything that we're going to be doing will be focused on real problems and real issues that teachers and leaders want to make and address in their own schools. And then I often think, there's change for change's sake, and then there's change for true meaning and transformation. And so there's some content. We're not suggesting let's just do everything differently, but we're looking, well, what are those practices? What are those? If what we're really looking for is those skills, if we're hoping to build those skills and mindsets that will support students to thrive in the future of learning and work, well, there are some real practices that we know from the research can begin to lead to those. And so we'll dig into some of those practices and then see how we can apply those hack mindsets, see how we can get started now, because I know everyone on this call knows it's hard to implement a new practice, to implement project-based learning in your school, to shift the student parent conferences into teacher-led student conferences. That doesn't happen overnight, but small things can happen overnight. And that's kind of what we'll dig into. Again, just as by way of acknowledging our inspiration and our sources, the School Retool program on which a lot of this work is based we implemented it in many states around the United States, and in collaboration with lots of local collaborators. And then that's why I was so excited to meet the folks at Catalyst as a really strong local collaborator who understand the context here. And that's why we tried it here, right? We've run now 3 school leader fellowships two school leader, 1 teacher fellowship here in Northern Ireland. And there's some examples of what we saw in those first 2 sessions or first 2 cohorts. So we saw school leaders visualizing and affirming student learning and thinking processes using learning galleries, one of those equitable learning practices, and even something as simple as thinking timers, right? We saw school leaders exploring grading practices, really looking at, well, how are we grading and what are we grading? They were listening to student voice in new ways, hiring, for want of a better word, their students as consultants. And then they really shifted the focus. We had some principals who let students take over a class and really we call it defronting the classroom, but really let students take the focus on what it is that they want to learn and really take and honor their learning. So really, really proud of the great work that principals were doing in this work. Patricia, we need a break for my voice.
Okay, so Michelle and I have been working with students then using the same kind of processes, mindsets, the design thinking methodology, and we'd worked with students from primary school right through to PhD level, but beginning to recognize what if we could combine the experience of school leaders and then work with pupils as well. What difference and change might that bring in the school with the pupils almost learning the same process but implementing the same mindset? So we had the fantastic opportunity recently to work both with the teachers in the school, in a school that had completed the school retool program with in St. Joseph's. And we had the opportunity to go into the school and work with a class of year 9 boys. The boys, that started with them, they were working on a live challenge that really mattered to them. So they had the opportunity to sort of speak and listen to each other, using empathetic processes to find out something that annoyed them all, something that wasn't working properly for them all. And our focus was on that kind of the slump in the afternoon. What happens in the afternoon when everybody is kind of really disengaged and tired? So in this pilot we worked with the boys over 4 sessions. We really introduced them to design thinking processes, but we stretched their mindset. We were introducing the ideas of curiosity, of everybody is imaginative, but how do you reawaken that imagination? And we used lots of little exercises that they were able to actively engage in. It's a very, very active learning process. We basically have a kind of every 10 to 15 minutes, there's a change, but it's all connected. So the boys start with a challenge and they end up having had the opportunity to sort of generate new ideas. We'd give them processes for coming up with ideas, to really understand the problem from each other's perspective, it's not solely focused on yourself. One of the key things in this is that they work in teams and they've got to really communicate with their other team members. So in addition to learning the design thinking process, they are also having to develop those key skills of communication, working in team, working with others, speaking, the things that we are being told by employers are required or essential for the future of work. So you can see here in this photograph, they are really engaged in the process of building. We found that it's really important just with cheap materials to build a version of your idea and concept. And we were able to do that with the guys, and then to move to the fact that they finish up sort of doing a presentation to each other. And we use a lot of physical energizers as well in the process, just to show that in addition to having your brain stretched, you also have like a body stretch to keep the children alert and awake. So that's a very quick overview. You can see in the background of one of those photographs, the boys are in a bubble, but their plan was that they were going to create a real bubble, the bubble outside. So there's a little picture in the background of an arched, and they wanted to learn outside, and they wanted to be in a real bubble, not in an imaginary bubble that kept them stuck in a classroom. So that's what they're building there. And then obviously we got some feedback from the pupils about the experience. What did it feel like for them to participate in this, and what did they learn? And you can see, to learn to understand other people's thoughts and ideals. I think it was ideas, but it came out as ideals, and to work as a team. So that's a massive learning in 4 lessons, to be able to work as a team. They didn't particularly, a lot of people wanted to work with their friends, but understood the challenge then, if you work with other people, how do you get your ideas across? And this, I love that the human imagination is powerful and smart. So what we want is them to become problem solvers, to use their imagination to solve problems, and to really have like a common language with the pupils, the teachers, and the leaders in the school, all having the same approach to that problem solving, and ideally solving small problems in their own school environment that really matter to them.
It all goes back to that culture, doesn't it? I mean, it's just like if the leader knows how to do it, if the teachers know how to do it, if the pupils know how to do it, as you say, common language, common culture, and it's so powerful.
Okay.
Is this me?
This is you, Peter, again.
This is me. Sorry, everyone. So moving forward, we're really hoping to build on what we've learned here. So we told you we've already had 2 full cohorts of school leaders, and we've worked with one group of teachers and 1 group of students. And we really, moving forward, want to continue to build on this, strengthen relationships also between schools and businesses, a piece we haven't talked as much about yet, but really core to this next round, supporting school leaders and other educators here to really prepare for the future of work and civic life. You know, you've heard those words from me before. And then really honoring and acknowledging this context, as Elaine mentioned from the very beginning of this call. Like this is a different time, and yet we still have needs. We have the same needs that we had before, and we have new needs now as we're moving forward with our students. But somehow we don't have new resources, and so our context in schools is always with existing resources, and that's that's what we want to work together on. What does it look like in practice?
So over the last wee while, we've been trying to figure out what are the key ingredients, what will make this different, and what are the benefits for schools. So we've come up with a 4-leveled program, and it starts, as Peter has said, it has to start with school leaders to create the culture that will allow all the rest of this to happen. So what we want to do is to deliver a school retool school leaders program again. That program is a 4-day program, so it requires leaders coming away from school and getting away from the distractions of school and having the opportunity to meet in a cohort with leaders from other schools. So we're looking for 2 from each of 20 schools, and we will run that twice. So we will have 2 cohorts of leaders in this round of the program. The next stage of the process for us is then to say, well, so now how might we get the teachers really actively engaged in this process as well? So we want to get at least 2 teachers from each of 10 schools, but potentially it could be up to 4. But 2 teachers from each of 10 schools who have gone through, where the school has gone through the leaders program. They may previously have done it. So a school might come in just at the teacher level if they've been part of the original school retool cohorts. So teachers will come together, and we will work with the teachers on a learning challenge, a design challenge, something that is really significant to them, important to them and to their school. And part of this as well is also providing the teachers with the sort of experience of the tools and techniques that would be used with the pupils. So that program we see as being a 3-day program. We are in a position where we're going to have listened to schools and the challenges that you face. We would be able to provide a substitute cover for 2 of those teachers to attend. Again, it will be out of school and it will be done elsewhere, hopefully at Catalyst, but to create that space for teachers to really meet other teachers and have the opportunity to kind of share this learning with others. And the idea then is that we will filter that down, and in this program we will be able to then deliver in 5 of those schools. Will be ready for the delivery with the pupils, and we will do that as an introductory workshop with the pupils, and then a 1-day boot camp with students where we introduce them to the design thinking process. But our idea is that the teachers that have worked with us will then have that experience of delivering that in the classroom. Between all of this, there is also a sort of a coaching, so you're not left on your own. Once you become the Catalyst School, we will be working with you across this journey. So there's time for coaching in between. What support do we need to give teachers? What do we need to do afterwards to build your confidence to use these approaches with pupils in your school? And then alongside all of that, we have this element of interaction with businesses. Catalyst has an amazing network of businesses that they have strong relationships with, and it kind of came up, how might we develop new relationships between schools and business that would support the school in their journey of making their learners better fit for work. So we want to create a meaningful, mutually beneficial relationship, not one where it's kind of business coming in and telling schools what to do, but it's a really collaborative, beneficial relationship to both parties. And we will be piloting new ways of doing that create the equity lens as well. So create that equality between business and schools so that both parties get the opportunity to work collaboratively to develop the next generation of learners. So that's a quick overview of the key ingredients of the program.
Nice. And we are, and we should have mentioned also, if you like, I would imagine you might questions might be coming up along the way, and we'll have some time for open questions along the way. But don't hesitate also to drop them in the chat, and if we can answer them along the way, we will, or we can answer them at the end. I have to say, we're going to introduce our very special guest here in a minute, but one question I had was, what does this have to do with generation innovation? I know a lot of people on this call are really steeped in generation innovation, have been very supportive of that program. So I guess I should just answer that question. But one of the things we're really excited about this is to see that this work is kind of starts earlier, right? This is more at the key stage 3 level, and we think like just how much more powerful would that be to have the young people at Generation Innovation who've come through a school where they're already learning the tools of design. They're already learning in a school that is supportive of those outcomes. And so we feel like there's a nice integration between those two. Although, as you can tell, it is different for those of you who are familiar with that kind of reimagined work experience program. So that was my question. But without further ado, we are really excited to be able to share with you a special guest on the call today, Declan Murray, a principal from St. Joseph Boys High School. And we have, you've heard Patricia and I talk a lot about this, but Declan has actually experienced it. Declan, can I turn it over to you?
Yeah, sure. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. So yeah, we got involved following a presentation that Steve gave to principals in the Killyhevlin Hotel. And myself and the teacher in charge of teaching and learning in the school, David Nolan, we took part in Hacking, and our Hacking story was basically based around how we can make student experience in the school better. We started off using a Shadow a Student challenge, which Peter kind of weaved into the program. And what we did is we shadowed a middle band year 8 student for a whole day. So we went through his school day to figure out what he learned, how he learned, what his experiences were. And as per usual, things didn't go to plan. The young student had a guitar lesson, which myself and Peter found ourselves in. There was a cover lesson, which we had to adapt and use that we took students out and kind of had a bit of a focus group, but it was a true experience of that young person's school day. And using that information from the Shadow Student Challenge and what we already knew about the school, my concern was that there was too many students going through a day in St. Joseph's who were too passive in class. They weren't engaged in their learning. And it was taking all the pleasure away from their learning in school. And what we wanted to do was to try and make sure that as many staff in the school as possible were placing students into a zone where they had no option but to think. We wanted to make sure that in every single lesson that pupils found themselves in a situation where they had to process information, they had to use their soft skills, they had to go into deeper learning processes, they had to use metacognition, because we've all been through university and we all learned about Vygotsky and Piaget, and then you get into school and everything's 100 miles an hour and you've got exam results to worry about, you've got 1,000 things thrown at you every single day, and it's very easy to learn and lose kind of focus on what we should actually be doing on a day-by-day basis. So that was the focus of our work with Peter and with School Retool. So that's what we wanted to do, get young people as often as possible in a position where they had no option but to think. And that was the basis of which we started. So we working with other principals, working with other school leaders, working with Catalyst, working with Peter. What we kind of got around to was this idea that we needed a group of teachers in the school who were going to work together. So we asked for volunteers. And what we did is we got 9 people who came forward, who were willing to give up their own time for some professional development. Now, we at that stage had a school staff of 23. So 9 out of 23 was a good percentage of the school. We weren't going to get all members of staff, but we wanted to get enough staff to create a kind of tipping point that would bring about a cultural change in St. Joseph's. And all we asked them to do was we gave each teacher a large A2 sheet of paper. And we asked them to spend, I think it was a period of a week or 2 weeks, but their only task was to gather artifacts which showed when they put pupils in a position where they had to think, where they had to process information, where they had no option but to engage in what was actually taking place at that lesson in that point in time. And we called it the Thinking About Thinking group. And that's what we asked these teachers to do, to put young people in a position where they had to think about their own thinking. And all we had to ask staff to do was to collect artifacts, and those artifacts were stuck on to their big massive A2 sheet of paper. So what we got back were things like quotes from students, things that students had said during a lesson which showed that they were thinking about their own thinking, that they were engaged in deeper learning. We got some people who brought back worksheets that they were able to use, techniques and strategies which showed that these soft skills were being applied. And what we started to notice was that these teachers started to work together. They started to bounce ideas off each other. They started to learn from each other as much as they were learning from anybody else. And then we engaged in one of Peter's activities, which was a learning wall. So we got all these artifacts together and we put them on the staff room wall. And then we purposefully held a staff meeting in the staff room so that all the other staff members of the school could see and engage in what was taking place. And this led to more teachers starting to ask questions, because I mean, again, you're putting people in a position where they have no choice but to engage. It was all there, plastered all over the walls of the staff room. So again, other teachers started to become involved, started to ask questions. And what we're trying to do was build this kind of a community of learners within the school where teachers were thinking about their own practice. Because again, we were very conscious of the fact that we weren't preparing students for the world of work, which was ahead of them. We were very good at teaching the pupils the hard skills of what they needed, but we wanted students to go out there into the world of work to be able to take on any role that they might come across in the future, so that they were able to change learning styles pretty quickly, that they were able to adapt when the economy changed. So that's basically what we were trying to do. And we did get more staff engaged and staff trying to think about how young people learn. And it was this dialogue is what we were trying to create in the school. We were trying to create a culture where people shared ideas. And one of the things that we noticed is that the students started to notice patterns. They started to notice teachers who were using similar strategies throughout the school. So things like opinion lines and question lines, people started to notice, well, I've actually used what the technique that you're teaching me, I've seen in English. What you're doing now, I've seen Mr. Fox use in his maths class. And it got to the stage where students started to notice that teachers were asking the same question. So the question that we encouraged staff to use was, how do you know you know? So, okay, you know this fact or you know this piece of information, but how do you know you know? And again, what we got was students stopping teachers and saying, that's the same question. That's exactly the same question that Miss Mallon asked me. So it was students starting to make links between these teachers who were starting to teach around the same focus areas. But we took it further. We gave every teacher a stopwatch. Now, we could have used phones or whatever, but we wanted to give teachers something in their hand that they were all using, and then it gave them that kind of ownership of what they were actually doing. But all we asked teachers to do was the time during a lesson, how often pupils were put in that position where they had no option but to think. So how much of your lesson, our lessons here are 35 minutes or an hour 10 for a double. How long during that learning experience did the young people have no option but to engage in the learning? So how often did you get rid of all the stuff which was around the outside of the lesson, your talk and individual work, but how long did the student actually spend thinking and engaged in deeper learning? And there was no right or wrong answer. We all came back a week later, and I was part of this group as well. I have my own science class, my own GCSE science class. I was coming back with answers as well and saying, this is what I got. Somebody else was saying, this is what I got. And then the discussion developed into, well, what actually are we considering deeper learning? And it was about creating that dialogue within the group. But again, no right or wrong answer. What is the dialogue? What questions are staff asking each other? And how is the conversation progressing? But again, we took it one step further again, and we asked industry to come in and observe lessons. So we had people from MJM, we had people from Exact Engineering here in Uri, we had people from First Derivatives who come in and observed lessons in the school. Because again, what we wanted to make sure was that what we were doing was fit for the world of work. And through working with Catalyst, we realized that one of the best things that we can teach our young people is transferable skills. This idea that when they go out into the world of work, that whatever they have learned in school doesn't end there, but it can be transferred from whatever role that may come up in the future, because we all know that young people are going to be taking up roles in companies which don't exist at the minute. So again, we invited these people in. We asked them to observe lessons in St. Joseph's, and we wanted them we wanted to make sure that our education was fit for purpose, and it was about taking their opinions on board and not being afraid of some of the criticism that came our way, because what we wanted was, if these companies took on a student from St. Joseph's, that these companies would understand the skills that our young people had. So if, for a want of a better way of looking at it, we were trying to turn our young people into products, that when these companies took on a St. Joseph's student, they would know, when I take on a St. Joseph's student, this young person is able to adapt to different roles. He's able to process information. He's able to take on different roles within a group setting. He's not afraid when it comes to being critical of his own performance and judging his own performance. And that's where we are with the journey at the minute. And our journey hasn't stopped there, because, as Peter said, we've been able to welcome Michelle and Peter and Patricia into school to work with our young people, to try and teach them better ways of hacking and better ways to come to solutions. And Peter asked me yesterday, what would I say if I was to encourage other schools to become involved? Well, the first thing I'd say is School Retool offers you an awful lot of flexibility. We go on staff training sometimes, and it might be about data analysis, or you might go on about GDPR. What School Retool allowed us to do was to create something which fitted the kind of idiosyncrasies of our school. So I was able to look at something that, as a school leader, I wanted to change, which was this idea, as I said, of making people think in class, taking them out of that passive state. And we were able to design a program that really got under the skin of our school. So it was that idea of flexibility. The second thing is the expertise. We were able to link in with the expertise of Catalyst and make links with companies. We were able to use the expertise of Patricia and Peter and Michelle. And again, most importantly as well, is it allowed us time. We were able to take 4 days out of school where we had the time to sit back and think, because you guys know it's 100 miles an hour in school, and you don't have time, and you think to yourself, well, I'll get to that next week, or I'll get to that at the end of the day, and 90% of the time it's delayed further. Whereas we were able to get the time out of school to go away and just focus on what was annoying us in our own schools and what it was that we wanted to change, and it bought us 4 days to go away and get the headspace to think about these areas. And the last thing I would say is that we learned an awful lot from others. Even some of the photographs that Peter was showing you there, we took a lot of those ideas back to our school. And again, you're dealing with like-minded schools. You're dealing with other schools who are willing to put themselves out there and take risks and sometimes fail. And that was one of the things that myself and David, the head of teaching and learning in the school, got from it. We were able to steal ideas from other schools, to see what other schools are doing and see what other schools were struggling with as well. But to conclude here, I can't recommend the program enough. I can't recommend the direction that it's brought our school down enough. It really has been it takes you out of your comfort zone. It makes you be self-critical and analyze your own school and your own performance. So from a school leader's point of view, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. So I hope that was what you were looking for, Peter, and I hope that makes sense to the rest of you.
Peter, you're on mute.
I'm on mute as well. I was just going to say to thank you for that, because it has been amazing to hear from Declan and to hear his perspective on the program. We can talk about it all we like, but it's so much more impactful for you to hear from somebody who's been through the program. And Declan, your honesty about the program has been, and how you feel about it is really, really important. And we just want to say thanks a million for taking the time out of your busy day to come yet again, but to share your experience with everybody else that is here. Has been amazing, and it's been fantastic for us to work with the school, because some of the things you mentioned there, like flexibility, expertise, taking time, we have had nothing but your flexibility has made it possible to deliver the program in the way that we have done it in the schools up to date. So we just have if you want to share the slides, Peter, again. we've got the words of some of the teachers. Oh, that's a wee bit further ahead. Okay, so it's an opportunity for you just to see. This is in the way we had the student feedback. This is just a little bit of the feedback from the leaders who participated in the original school retool delivery programs. So, you know, sort of some of the key things, you can read it yourselves, but it reiterates a lot of what you've said, Damien. It's having the confidence in your own decision making. Oh, and taking time out. I mean, it seems like we're asking a lot of school leaders to say, look, will we take 4 days away? But you can hear the impact that actually that time out of school has, and the opportunity to meet with other professionals, and the real importance of building a network with other people that you are like-minded, other school leaders that want to behave in this way and to work in this way, and the support that brings. And how little, like a small hack, can make a really big difference in a school, and just having that hacking mindset, the change that it can make. I wasn't going to read them out, and then I did.
Sorry, Patricia, you can see I was trying. I want to make sure that we end on time, so I was getting a little too fidgety there with the fingers. Sorry, everyone. But I think we heard so much from Declan there that I think is really echoes it in here. So I'm gonna just. Do you mind if I just advance us? Through here? Yeah.
Okay, so what we wanted to do today was to let you know that we have set dates for the first 2 leaders cohorts. We haven't set the dates for the teachers yet, because we feel we have to start with the leaders first, and we can work with the schools that want to get involved. But we've set these dates. So the first cohort would be all Tuesdays, if I'm getting that correctly, and the second cohort is all Thursdays. And we wanted to get this done in the first term, because the rest of the program is dependent on having the delivery of the leaders program to create the culture in the school, and that will then leave time to do the delivery of the teachers and the pupils elements. So those dates are important. We will have we have a link for you to complete. If you wish to apply, or you have a school leader that wants to apply, there's an information leaflet with that has those dates. So you don't need to, although we can put the dates in the chat if you want. But I suppose, Peter, what we want to do now is to say questions, any information that anybody wants. Yes, being mindful of time, but we have 10 minutes still.
Yeah.
If people have questions
And just for ease, would someone on our team mind just dropping that link in the chat as well to the application?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what will happen if I click on it. But yeah, would love to hear any questions for any of us. You've got Steve and Elaine, Declan, Peter, Patricia, Michelle on the line. Would love to hear any questions or what this makes you think about. I really appreciate Declan mentioning Vygotsky, and just was. It's rare. I mean, it's not that often that the Vygotsky and Piaget come up in webinars, and so delighted to hear that. But we are learning from each other, and so would love to hear what you're what you're thinking. Trying to leave some sufficient wait time. Also, letting you a question that we have that for you is thinking about what's the best way for us to get the message out. We, as Patricia mentioned, this starts with a school leaders fellowship, and from there, those those 20 schools, 10 of them will have bandwidth to have 10 folks. 10 schools come into the schools program. And so what's the best way to reach those school leaders that might be interested? In terms of school leaders, are we talking about headmasters, or can they be heads of department? Fantastic question. Thank you, Denise. They can be, it can be both. The key thing that we have learned from running these cohorts is it's about will and agency. So if in your school setting as a leader, you have the really, I would say the agency, the degrees of freedom to try something, it works really well. If you're in a situation where a leader at any level who's in a situation where they don't have that freedom to try things, that's when it gets sticky, because Declan mentioned the time together, but as important as the time together is that also the time that he was talking about the flexible time back at your school. So we come together, we design a hack, you go back to our school, we try it out, It's not some extra thing. It's something that we want, that we really want to do, and then we come back and reflect on it. So if we can't do the piece of shadowing that student that Declan mentioned, or trying the hack, it doesn't work as well. So as long as they have that freedom to try and engage, then any level of school leader. Thank you. Great question. Other questions? Any thoughts about ways of helping share the message? We know that people are very, very busy, and would want to make sure that leaders who feel like they're interested in trying something new, willing to get engaged, we want to make sure we reach them. Steve mentioned from the outset, this is also about inclusive innovation, and so making sure that that we're reaching those audiences that are interested. Work with the ALCs. Great. Thank you. And if there are ways, we're going to share contact information in a minute. If there, we welcome if you want to share share this link with a key person there, but also if you're willing to make an introduction to a particular person at those ALCs, that would be super helpful. Any other questions? Well, anyone else on the team want to share anything else? Or
Peter, we have another question about.
we do.
Yeah.
Oh, great question. How are schools selected? So what we really are looking for, I think those key characteristics that we mentioned about willingness to kind of being able to commit to the time and having the agency to really to engage, those are key. Other than that, we're looking at post-primary. We're looking for ideally a diverse range of schools. We think this works best when there's a wide range of schools within the cohort. We do have a desire to really support schools who are committed to serving their students who may be furthest from opportunity. So we'll read the applications, and we'll make the decisions based on those. Other folks and other criteria or thoughts from other folks on the team want to?
No, it's really the desire, a strong desire to take part, and to be willing to participate in all elements of the program that leads to the greatest success.
Yeah.
That's how it will have the biggest impact in your school.
And that's why, when you see the application, you'll see there's really a commitment to, if selected, are you willing to go through all of it? Because it is kind of I know this in a way, this feels a little bit like a sales pitch, but I feel like this is just it's an amazing opportunity that Catalyst is making possible here. And so we want to make sure that if for folks who sign up, if there are others who weren't able to make it, we want to make sure that those that all those places get used. So it's that commitment and that focus. That's great. Hannah's saying, okay, great, that's enough of an answer. Thank you. Love it. Anyone else? Great. I mentioned contact info. We've got a shared address here of schools@wearecatalyst.org that if you have any other questions, we'll be definitely we'll be able to get those. Good. Thank you for popping that in the chat as well, Michelle. And we really don't hesitate. I mean, we're deeply committed to this work, and we are committed to building relationships with educators across Northern Ireland. So we really reach out if there are any questions, or if you think we think you should talk to somebody else, please put us in touch with those folks, and we'll be delighted. Did we mention the dates on the application? I think the applications close the 24th of July. So it's, time is there's time, but time is of the essence. We want to make sure that folks have time to know that they're in, and so they can start planning, because we know that the back to school is going to be a busy time. So to be able to plan for those days. So, and we'll look at them on a rolling basis. So if you know a school leader who is interested, or you are interested yourself, please want to get those in early. Anybody else? Thank you for putting that in there. Okay, anyone else on the Catalyst side have anything they?
No,
wanna
just
say?
that the recording will be available. So even if some of the teachers on the call today would like to share that with other teachers or their school principals, we can make that available as well.
Yes, wonderful. And I think we have a little flyer as well that we can even send out that will help with that as well. And I think we're in luck, and we get a minute of our day back. So again, thanks, and I hope that that last week of school goes well for you all.
Yes.
And just from the bottom of our hearts, thanks for everything you're doing. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone. Bye.